a sphinx. Do you agree?
I am none of these things you mentioned. I am an ordinary man. I defend the interests of the people in my capacity as President of the Republic. I defend the nation to which I belong. I cling fast to our rights, no more, no less. I defend them to the best of my ability.
So you're not a sphinx?
No, I wouldn't say that about myself.
Even people who know you well and who respect you say, Americans are naive if they think anyone really undergoes a conversion in this part of the world. That whatever is put on paper, whatever the words are, in your heart, they say, you still want Israel destroyed. We were told that you used to point to a painting in your office of Salah ad-Din at the famous battle at which he defeated the Crusaders, saying to people, that's what's going to happen to Israel. Is that what you still believe in your heart?
The painting which depicts Saladin in his war against the Crusaders' invasion is one thing, and the question of the Jews is another. The Jews have nothing to do with the Crusades that happened in our region. Today we are facing the reality that Israel has committed aggression against our Arab lands and made millions of our people homeless. Homeless. Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese. The United Nations has issued resolutions about this, and the UN represents the whole world.
The UN resolutions, number 242 and 338. They call on Israel to give back land taken during the two big wars in 67 and 73 in return for security and peace.
The United States of America and everyone should urge Israel to implement those resolutions. And if they don't, then it will be crystal clear that Israel does not want peace. Our belief is that Israel does not want peace. Therefore, it is now rejecting, or rather, has rejected, the American initiative.
In your heart, do you want to see Israel destroyed? Yes or no?
This is not my concern. I want peace. But if Israel views peace as leading to its destruction, then that's up to Israel. We want peace. Peace is one thing, destruction is another.
So no.
In our view, we see that they have interest in peace. Peace does not destroy. Peace builds. Peace builds. I seek peace, not destruction.
So no. I'm trying again. No. How much hope do you really hold out for this peace conference? When you're alone in your room at night, do you think this could be the beginning of peace?
As for my hope in peace, if we lose hope, there can be no peace. But there are now initiatives and serious efforts being made by Arab, European, and American sides. Now, when we turn to the other side of the equation, I mean, the intransigent Israeli side, we can become pessimistic. Nevertheless, we will work to achieve peace.
If I could relate to you what a high-level Israeli told me he'd like to ask you, will he say right now that he is prepared to renounce violence against Israel for good?
You mean renounce peace? When we say that we seek peace, we understand quite well that achieving peace means an end to all acts of violence. This is obvious.
Let's assume that at the conference, miraculously perhaps, but some agreement is reached about the Golan Heights. You remember the Golan Heights is that 463-square-mile mountain region won by the Israelis during the 67 war. We asked the president if the return of Syria's land alone, the Golan, would be enough for you to conclude a peace treaty with Israel.
This solution must not leave any part of the problem unsolved. Because if we leave any part of the problem without solving it, there will be no peace in the region. A comprehensive peace requires that we solve all subjects of the conflict between Arabs and the Israelis.
As you know, the United States is now engaged in a lot of turmoil about the question of $10 billion in loan guarantees for Israel. If the United States, the Congress, goes ahead and approves those loan guarantees for Israel right now, within the next few weeks, will you still go to the conference?
As for the $10 billion requested by Israel, this is not pushing the peace process forward. Rather, this will obstruct it to the extreme, because those billions will provide housing for Jews coming from the Soviet Union and elsewhere, housing in occupied Arab territories, in Palestinian, Syrian, and perhaps Lebanese land. And naturally, when we find that these lands have been filled with houses for Jewish immigrants, there will be nothing for us to talk about in the framework of what could be called a peace process.
But you would still go to the conference.
This will be decided in due time. However, it is very strange that a state outside the United States should be able to impose its opinion within the United States and be able to get billions of dollars against the will of the American administration. This is strange. It is not easy for anyone to accept.
Of course, as you know, Mr. President, Congress is also the will of the American people. But I'd like to move on if I could. You've said you trust President Bush. Give me a one-sentence description of the man.
We feel that he wishes to achieve peace and that he is seriously attempting to bring this wish to life. In my view, Israel itself would be one of the parties which would benefit most from the efforts of President Bush.
As President Bush promised to put pressure on Israel to give up the Golan,
it's not only President Bush who speaks about the Golan Heights as Syrian land, but also successive American administrations that have always confirmed that position. President Bush is committed to the American stand as regards to the Golan and the occupied territories in general.
But I'm going to try one more time. Did he promise you to put pressure on Israel?
No.
He did not. However, President Bush, the Israelis, and all those who dealt with us know that there can be no peace if Israel does not return our land.
A taxi driver in New York said to me, do you know what I'd like to ask him? I'd like to ask him this. Why doesn't he just go to Israel like Sadat did and say, let's end this thing. Let's get it over. Let's settle it right now.
Please tell this person that it would be against my nature to do that. Peace cannot be achieved by begging. It's a right to be claimed. Nobody gives peace as a grant. And I am not of the sort to go to Israel to beg for peace. Peace must be established by all, for all to take from and benefit from.
So invite them here.
Certainly that won't achieve peace. Peace is something you build. It requires the participation of the international community so that there can be real, stable, viable, and collective peace.
If I could just ask you what I think Americans would ask you, what assurance can you give them that when they get on airplanes, that one of the groups headquartered in this city, the Palestine General Command, what assurance can you give them that there will not be a bomb on that plane threatening the lives of innocent civilians?
With respect to the American plane bombed over Europe, there has been no proof that any group present in Syria has any link with this matter. But I believe that officials in all countries must feel it is their duty to prevent terrorist acts, because such acts do not serve any just cause. Terrorism never serves a just cause. On the contrary, terrorism does harm to just causes. We have always said that we struggle and will continue to struggle against any terrorist act that we can combat. When each state in the world carries out its duty in combating terrorism, then terrorism will undoubtedly recede.
But the United States still has Syria on its list of countries which sponsor, support terrorism.
From our point of view, the United States has nothing to justify this. They could not, though we insisted, present one single piece of evidence to prove what they allege. So, what are they doing this for?
Here's the report President Assad is talking about. In it, the U.S. is making an awkward straddle. The document says on the one hand that Syria still gives support and safe haven to terrorist groups. But on the other hand, in language full of nervous hope, adds, there's no direct evidence of Syrian involvement in worldwide terrorism since 1987. The report cites Syrian progress in moving away from some terrorist groups and Syrian help on the hostages. And by the way, officials now say the fingerprints on that bombing of Pan Am 103 look more as if they belong to Libya than to Syria.
You watched the coup in the Soviet Union along with the rest of the world. Would you like to see Mr. Gorbachev ousted by a military regime?
No. No, we do not.
Tell me about the lesson of what has happened in the last year or two. When you look at what happened to Mr. Ceausescu in Romania, does a man like Saddam Hussein have to say to himself, the days are just about over for my kind of authoritarian government? And what does a man like President Assad say, who also has an authoritarian government, when he sees that process beginning, when democracy is springing up all around you? Do you say to yourself, my days are numbered, the days are numbered for people who control governments the way I do?
Never. Ideas of this type do not haunt me because I have never imitated others in what I do. We in Syria have never imitated the experiences you referred to. In our view, all elements of democracy exist in our country. In the U.S., there are 2 political parties. We have 7. We hold 3 elections in our country.
But, Mr. President, you run this country. You're not asking us to believe that you're not the boss in this country.
Of course, I'm not the boss or anything like it. Decisions in our country are made by institutions which debate them.
For Americans who've heard so much of the comparison, tell them what the biggest difference is between you and Saddam Hussein.
I know nothing between us but differences. I can't see any similarities. We share nothing. There is nothing in common between us. Can you give just one example? For instance, do I attack my neighbors? Do I wage war on my right and my left?
The people who write these articles
On the contrary, I defend my Arab brethren. Lebanon was paralyzed and we helped it stand on its feet.
You're just a subtler tactician than he is.
If this is true, then where is the liability?
Liability? We assume he means evidence, which brings us back to Lebanon.
When will you be withdrawing?
This is subject to Lebanese and Syrian needs. Lebanon needs the Syrian presence.
Mr. President, I know that Syria has been working recently on the whole hostage question. Do you believe within 2 weeks all of the Western hostages will be freed?
We still make efforts for their sake, and we believe that things are moving to the better. But of course, we cannot give a time limit. However, I repeat that things are moving to the better, and we will continue our efforts.
This is my final question. One sentence to say to Prime Minister Shamir of Israel on this eve of a possible peace conference.
I want to address the whole world and not an individual. All sides have an interest in peace. The United States, the Soviet Union, Europe, and other countries in the world, the Arabs and the Israelis. It is not useful to obstruct peace. Syria is serious in the work for peace.
By the way, we also asked President Assad about the standoff over the Palestinian delegation at the conference. Israel insists no members of the PLO, considers the PLO a terrorist organization. Assad indicated to us flexibility, saying a Jordanian-Palestinian combination of some kind would be fine with him, adding, at heart, all Palestinians support the PLO anyway. And finally, off-camera, when we asked further about changes in his feelings toward Israel, President Assad said, "The thing that has changed is the world. The world will not tolerate aggression anymore."